Hello everyone, I'm Spiritualist, Psychic, and Astrologer Ray Setter. Thank you once again for allowing me this opportunity to share with you my interpretations of the spiritual, astrological influences for the month of July 2016. If you've been following my forecasts over these last few months, I have been highlighting how I have foreseen the June time period to be somewhat unsettling and somewhat volatile. And certainly with what took place in Orlando, as well as what's taking place right now in Britain and the United Kingdom, we can certainly see how much of that energy is bringing about somewhat of a feeling of unsettlement. However, whenever something shifts, whenever there is a tremendous amount of energy that is shifting, especially if these influences are encouraging us and offering us an opportunity to really accelerate our evolution and certainly our spiritual growth. At first, the way all this comes together, sometimes it does seem as though it's not serving a purpose. It seems as though it's unsettling, and it creates the possibility of a tremendous amount of fear, whereas really it's an opportunity to release that fear. So I encourage you to keep that in the back of your mind. Our new moon, which in July takes place on July 4th, and incidentally and of no accident, it coincides with the birth date of the United States. Whenever a lunation coincides with a birthday, whether it be a new moon, a full moon, a solar eclipse, or a lunar eclipse, the coming year can potentially be very significant for the individual, and in this case for the United States. A new moon that coincides with a birthday is symbolic of a new beginning. The coming year can be very much symbolic of a new beginning, and certainly these influences will unfold as we go through the course of the year. When I look at the chart for the new moon, especially the one that is cast for the birthday of the United States, one of the most significant influences comes from Pluto. Pluto is very misunderstood, and regardless of it being classified or reclassified as a dwarf planet, it still has one of the most influential presence in the astrological composition. And when Pluto is very prominent, one, there is potentially a rise in fear, because Pluto does connect with fear. Pluto connects with fear that is very deep-seated, that is very much deep within us. However, when there is a surge of a certain element, and in this case, the surge of fear, it's because we are being given the opportunity to release the fear. Certainly what took place over these last few days with what is happening in the United Kingdom right now created a tremendous amount of fear. And many times our decisions are based on that fear and connected to that fear. And in fact, right now we're given the opportunity to just do the opposite, to really embark on any decision from a place of love and not fear. We're given the opportunity to release that fear. And part of this new beginning that is to unfold, especially here in the United States as we go through this next year for the United States, we the people, each one of us individually, have been given the opportunities to empower ourselves. Meaning that we are offered the opportunity to recognize that all that we need for our well-being, our survival, we're already connected to. We are already all connected to that source of well-being, and that's the source that really created us all, created all of the universe, created all things in creation. Whether it be God or anything else, whatever it is that you may want to call that entity, if you will, we are all connected to that, and that energy and that power is very much inside of us. So we have been at a time of self-empowerment. And one element that I always like to encourage us to recognize is that even though, or rather just because we are given the opportunity to empower ourselves, it does not give us the right to control or inflict our power upon another. Because certainly if we do that, we are demonstrating ourselves to be very connected with ego and self-righteousness. And with that, we are being given the opportunity to dissolve the ego as well as self-righteousness. So going back to what I was saying regarding what is unfolding here in the United States, in these next few months, we are once again at that time for us to recognize the power that is within us, to really understand how we have the ability to create everything that we desire, and also not to be reliant and dependent on another, specifically to be dependent upon our leaders, whether it be government leaders or spiritual leaders. You know, certainly as spiritual leaders, as prophets, we are here to share our knowing. However, we are not here to disempower anyone or to necessarily create followers, because then we are not serving a greater purpose. We are here to inspire every one of us to recognize the power that is within us, inside of us. And here in the United States, we are given the opportunity to do that. We're not here to overthrow the government. We're here to take back our power. I've been speaking of how we are also at a time of disclosure, where much of humanity, in fact all of humanity, is really being shown where we have perhaps been misled by our leaders in these last few years, even more so in the last 30 years, and even more so over the course of millenniums. We're at a time where humanity is raising its vibration. We are very much so awakening. And this awakening process really took place in 2012, and that's really what was happening during that time when the media was sensationalizing that the world would come to an end and there would be so much destruction happening. Really, there was a shift in consciousness that was beginning at that time, and this shift in consciousness, this acceleration towards higher consciousness, is very much what's being amplified in this time right now, and as we go through the summer months. It does not mean that we may no longer see devastation taking place in the outside world. You know, many times when there is a period of regeneration, when there is a period of transformation, we will observe whatever is considered to be unreal in the outside world to crumble away. Regarding what took place with Britain in these last few days, I'm recording this on June 28th, and I'm referring to what took place on June 24th with Britain's decision to break away from the European Union. Certainly, it released a tremendous amount of fear, and I'll share this with you because I recall on that day I could actually hear psychically from the psychic realm, from the ether, screams, ear-piercing screams happening because of how much fear was being triggered by that experience. And many times when something like that crumbles, it appears as though it's not serving a greater purpose. In reality, in the long term, it really is. There's such a restructuring of the financial and monetary system that's happening. And it's also specifically happening in the United States, because when I was referring to Pluto, went by transit, by passage, into the second house of the chart of the astrological chart of the United States. The second house of any chart connects with money, our values, anything monetary, and wherever Pluto passes through a chart, it indicates a significant period of regeneration, transformation, and metamorphosis. We will notice as we go through these next few years how the monetary system in the United States really does undergo its own metamorphic process. How it's going to unfold, I'm not clear and I'm not sure, but also too, every one of us is very instrumental in how that will come to form. You know, whenever we look to see what's happening, we look at possibilities. No one really has the ability to absolutely see the future, because then that would suggest that we are only living out a script. We are moment by moment creating and co-creating with spirit everything that comes to form, whether it be for ourselves personally, whether it be for our country, or globally. So we need to recognize that whatever is really going to happen, we are very instrumental in creating it so. And we need to abundantly be aware to not create with fear. Because when we create with fear, we miscreate experiences that we may not necessarily choose to have for ourselves. So, as I said, we are at a time of self-empowerment, the awareness of the power that's within ourselves. And when we are being given this opportunity to really release the fear, we have to be very careful that we actually do in fact release the fear, and we don't re-energize the fear. And because we are seeing so much crumbling right now with monetary systems, we may inadvertently direct fear towards feeling as though there's going to be a lack, there's going to be another crumble of the economic system. I can't say that there won't be. However, we have to recognize that if there is such an experience, it will not interfere with our well-being. And many times, as I said before, many times when the essence of anything is coming to form, its true nature, whatever is a facade, if you will, whatever is not real will begin to crumble. There has been a tremendous amount of false security placed in economics and with money matters. And what's crumbling is that sense, that element of false security, so that we can recreate real security and that understanding and that knowing of where this true sense of security comes from and what it is connected to, and that is spirit. We are being given the opportunity, especially here in the United States, to understand that every one of us is connected to abundance. When we look out into the world, there is abundance everywhere. There's abundance in the plants, in the grains of sand. There's abundance in the stars. There's abundance in the water that's in the ocean. Abundance is very much our birthright. And also we are being given the opportunity to recognize here in the United States how we can create that abundance for ourselves. And again, I need to add that we must do this from a place of love and not ego or self-righteousness, because the ego and self-righteousness is what's being dissolved at this time. We're being given the opportunity to really recognize higher truths. I can't tell you what is the absolute truth, because in this realm of consciousness, it's certainly all relative. However, I would suggest if any of our truths are not connected to love, then perhaps we need to reevaluate and reassess whatever we may consider to be our truth. In the chart cast for the United States on the new moon, we also have a significant influence from the planet Neptune. Neptune right now is transiting the sign of Pisces. The United States, the sun of the United States, is in the sign of Cancer. The water signs have somewhat of a heightened psychic sensitivity. And when certain influences come along, that sensitivity will be amplified. And what we are noticing in the United States, there is a heightened sense of psychic sensitivity and psychic awareness. We're not always completely aware of that. Anyone who has heard me speak, especially during my events, I do not consider what I demonstrate to necessarily be a gift. I personally don't believe that I have a psychic gift, if you will. I have an ability that every one of us possesses. And I always say, just like we all have vocal cords, we can't all sing like Andrea Bocelli. We do have a psychic connectivity. And we're at a time where we're being given the opportunity to recognize that we are all becoming profoundly psychically aware. And with that, we also need to recognize what we need to do for ourselves to keep our energy fields very clear, but also ask for protection from spirit so we don't encounter dark influences, because just as we are aware of the light, we will also be aware of the dark, and those dark energies can certainly have influences over us. We are given the ability to have that eye of discernment between the two when we keep ourselves very clear and very, very grounded, and I need to emphasize that. I encourage everyone to explore and develop your own psychic sensitivity, and with that, be that much more aware to keep yourself very clear and very grounded. There's so much information out there that can help you do just that, and I encourage everyone to explore those possibilities and opportunities and really recognize what resonates with you in doing so, because what may work for me may not necessarily work for you. So I certainly encourage everyone to really explore and recognize what resonates with you. As I have been saying, there has been a false sense of financial security in the world for many, 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 many years. We certainly misplace our personal security on the climate of the economy, what's happening in the outside world. That in and of itself is a false sense of security, because whatever is taking place in the outside world, it can potentially be unstable, uncertain. The only thing that is absolutely certain, and I say this with conviction, is our connection to the spirit realm. And when we can recognize that connection, when we can acknowledge that connection, when we can nurture that connection, no matter what happens in the outside world, no matter what happens, no matter what crumbles, we are connected to the source of well-being. And I recall many times hearing actually Wayne Dyer emphasize that point. And I'm emphasizing that point abundantly right now, because we are being so given the opportunity to really know that for ourselves. And in these coming months, in these next few months, we certainly need to remember that for ourselves. We may not necessarily see the economic crumble which took place in 2008. However, there are slight similarities to what was taking place at that time. If it is to be to that extreme, I'm not certain, and I'm not necessarily feeling that we would need to have that experience again. However, we do not want to take that for granted, because certainly at that time we were giving yet another opportunity to really recognize where the source of well-being comes from, where that true source of all that we need really, where it originates from, and how it's available to every one of us. Our full moon will take place on, let me just get my chart out here, on July 19th. And one of the most significant factors that I'm seeing potentially come to form after the full moon on July 19th is, as I'm talking about regarding economics and economic structures, we may observe once again the crumbling of large businesses, large corporations. You know, when anything like that crumbles, it's really because it was built on a vulnerable, volatile foundation. And so that we can rebuild, if you will, we first need to understand the foundation that we are laying out and that we are establishing. And again, anything that crumbles, it isn't real. You know, to go back to A Course in Miracles, one of the first passages in the Course of Miracles, it states that what is real cannot be threatened, and what is unreal simply does not exist. We are being given an opportunity to recognize what is unreal because it does not exist, and to embrace what is real and welcome that into our lives. So I suggest every one of us to just keep ourselves grounded, Keep our connections with the spirit realm clear. Keep your energy field clear. As much as you possibly can, stay in the light and always stay in a place of love, and bring that love wherever it is that you go. Because quite honestly, as I understand it, really love is the only thing that's going to change what is potentially going to happen for the better in the outside world. So I leave you with that. Once again, I'm spiritualist, psychic, and astrologer Ray Setter. I thank you for sharing this time with me. Always stay in the light and stay in a place of love. Namaste.